A routine stop at a quiet gas station turns into something far darker for Darius, a black man alone on a rural southern road after sunset. What begins as a simple fill-up unravels into a slow, suffocating encounter where silence feels louder than words, and every gesture carries the weight of judgment. Two men, one badge, and a stretch of gravel become the stage for an unspoken threat that never needs to be named. Because sometimes, the most terrifying thing isn't what happens, it's knowing how close you came to never making it home. I left my apartment around 6:30 that evening. The July heat was still clinging to the air like an extra layer of clothes, and even though the sun was low, everything shimmered under that orange haze you only get in small southern towns. I was driving out to visit my cousin, Marcus, a few counties over. He'd been on my case for weeks, saying I never made time for family. Truth was, I'd been working double shifts at the plant, and the thought of another hour on the road after clocking out didn't sit right. But guilt is heavy, heavier than heat. The drive was mostly empty highway lined with stretches of pine. Every few miles, an old gas station sat like a relic from a time when nobody locked their doors. I had half a tank left, but I figured I'd top it off before the sun dipped too low. There's something about driving rural roads at night that makes you feel like you've slipped out of the world. No streetlights, no noise, just darkness waiting for you to turn off your headlights. I pulled into a station just off County Road 18, a place that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 70s. Faded Coca-Cola signs, a single pump with peeling paint, and one buzzing fluorescent light above the door. A couple of rusted pickup trucks were parked to the side. Inside, through the grimy glass, I could see two men at the counter. Both white, both middle-aged. One wore a sheriff's hat, tilted back like a man comfortable everywhere. The other had a beard so thick it swallowed half his face. They were talking about something, but as soon as they saw me, the conversation fell quiet. That silence, it's a sound you never forget. Like air being sucked out of the room. My mama used to say, it ain't always what they say. It's what they stop saying when you walk in. I killed the engine, stepped out, and felt the weight of their eyes as soon as my boots hit the gravel. I told myself not to look nervous, but my body had its own plans. My hands fumbled with the gas cap like it was a math problem I hadn't studied for. The sheriff, if that's what he was, didn't move from the doorway, but he angled himself just enough so I could see the badge catching the light. He had a slow way of chewing something in his jaw, maybe gum, maybe tobacco. His friend leaned against the counter inside, arms crossed, eyes narrow. They didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just watched. I told myself, don't rush. Nothing looks guiltier than rushing. I slid my card into the pump, punched in the zip code, waited for approval like it might come back with a verdict. The machine beeped, and the sound was so loud in the quiet it made me flinch. My pulse was hammering in my ears, and for a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, that paranoia that comes from too many news stories and not enough reasons to trust. Then I heard boots on gravel. "Evenin'," a voice said behind me. I turned, slow, like my body was moving through water. It was him, the sheriff. Up close, he looked taller than I'd thought. His hat cast a shadow that made it hard to see his eyes, but I could feel them on me like sunlight on bare skin. "Evenin'," I managed, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "Where you headed?" he asked, not like small talk, but like a checkpoint. I kept my tone even. "Just visiting family. Couple counties over." He nodded, slow. His hand rested on his belt, not the gun, not yet, but close enough to remind me it was there. "Long way from home this time of night." I shrugged, tried to make it casual. Figured I'd beat the traffic. His lip twitched, like that answer didn't quite pass inspection. The man inside hadn't stopped watching. I could feel him through the glass like a second shadow. The pump clicked off, loud as a gunshot. I jumped. He didn't. The pump clicking should have been a relief, but it sounded like a door slamming shut. I reached for the nozzle, careful not to make any sudden moves, though I couldn't tell you why. It's not like I was doing anything wrong. Still, guilt isn't about facts. It's about the weight of someone else's judgment pressing down on you until your knees want to buckle. "You from around here?" he asked, his tone flat, almost curious. "Almost." I swallowed, nodded toward the highway. "Not far." He tilted his head like he wanted more. Like not far wasn't enough. Behind him, the fluorescent light flickered, humming like an old refrigerator. That sound crawled into my skull and stayed there. "What's your name?" he said. "Darius," I answered, because lying felt like the kind of thing that could get you killed out here. "Darius." He repeated it slow, tasting it. His tongue pressed against his cheek, and I wondered if he was memorizing it for later. "Mind showin' me some ID?" That was when my chest tightened. Not because I didn't have it, I did. It was in my wallet, in my back pocket. But there's something about that request that feels like stepping onto a trap you didn't see until it snapped. I forced my voice calm. "Sure thing." I moved slow, announcing every motion in my head. Hand to my pocket. Pulling it out. Opening the wallet so he could see my hands were empty but for leather and plastic. My ID caught the glow from the light above us. He took it without saying thanks, his fingers brushing mine like ice. He stared at it longer than necessary. My full name. My address. Everything that made me me, shrinking under his gaze. Then he looked back up, eyes hidden in shadow. "You workin' at the plant?" "Yes, sir." That answer seemed to hang in the air, thick as the heat. He nodded, slow, then handed the ID back. But he didn't leave. He just stood there, chewing, like the silence itself was another question. "You carry in anything I need to know about, Darius?" My throat went dry. "No, sir." Another nod. Another pause. The air smelled like gas and old rubber, heavy enough to taste. Inside, his friend leaned forward against the counter, a grin curling on his face now, like he was watching a show he'd seen before. The sheriff spat into the gravel. "Good. Hate to have to search a fella this late." I laughed, soft and nervous, a sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. He didn't laugh back. His eyes stayed on me for one long, blistering beat, and then he stepped aside just enough to make it clear I was free to leave, if leaving was what you'd call it. I slid the nozzle back into place, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. My hands shook as I screwed the cap back on. Every instinct screamed at me to move faster, but I made myself take my time because fast looks guilty. And guilty gets you buried. When I finally climbed into the car, the seat felt cold against my back, even in that heat. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. The sheriff stayed there, a silhouette under that buzzing light, watching. His friend had come to the doorway now, arms crossed, both of them framed like figures in a painting you'd hang in a nightmare. I turned the key. The engine roared too loud, echoing off the empty lot. I put it in gear, eased out slow, feeling their eyes dig holes in the back of my skull. I didn't breathe until the station shrank in the rear view, a tiny square of sickly light swallowed by the dark. But even then, the road didn't feel empty. It felt heavier, like something had crawled into the back seat and settled there. I kept checking the mirror, waiting for headlights that never came. The silence pressed in so hard it was almost a sound. My chest hurt, like fear had hands and they were wrapped around my ribs. I made it to Marcus's place. Parked in his driveway. Sat there for 10 minutes before I could make my legs move. When he opened the door, laughing, saying I'd finally come through, I almost told him. Almost said how close I'd felt to disappearing into that gravel lot, just another story folks whisper about but never write down. Instead, I smiled. I stepped inside. And I left the night outside, where it waited. Where it always waits. One quiet stop on a rural highway turned into a night that Darius will never forget. What should have been a routine fuel-up spiraled into an encounter that left him questioning whether he'd make it home alive. Two men, one badge, and a darkness thicker than the night closed in without a single raised voice. Because sometimes, horror isn't in what's said, it's in what could happen if you move the wrong way. I left work later than I'd planned. The sun was already sinking behind the hills, painting the two-lane highway in muted gold. My shirt was damp with sweat, sticking to my back from a long shift at the warehouse, but the air outside felt heavier than the heat inside had. It was that southern July weight, the kind that makes your chest tighten and your skin hum like it knows something you don't. I was on my way home, 40 miles of empty road ahead, when the gas light came on. I cursed under my breath and scanned the roadside for a station. 10 minutes later, I spotted one, a small, old place with a flickering neon sign and a single pump standing like a worn-out sentinel in the gravel lot. Two pickup trucks sat off to the side, both coated in the same layer of dust that seemed to cling to everything here. I pulled in slow, headlights washing over the chipped siding of the station. Inside the store, under the buzzing fluorescent light, stood two men. One wore a khaki uniform shirt with a sheriff's badge pinned on his chest. His hat shadowed his face, but even from a distance, I could feel his eyes track me as I stepped out of my car. The other man leaned on the counter, arms folded, the kind of stare that lets you know you're not welcome without saying a word. I tried to ignore them. Slid my card into the pump, typed my zip code, and prayed it wouldn't give me trouble. Each beep from the keypad sounded like a hammer striking metal in the stillness. I gripped the nozzle and started fueling, eyes fixed on the dark tree line ahead. My gut told me not to look back, but instincts are hard to fight. The sheriff had stepped outside. He was just standing there now, boots crunching on gravel, hands resting on his belt like he was born that way. His eyes swept over me, slow, like he was taking inventory. I nodded at him, a reflex drilled into me since I was a boy. Keep it polite, keep it light. Evenin', he said. His voice was deep, deliberate. Evenin', I replied, forcing my tone steady. Where you headed? That question wasn't small talk. I could hear it in the space between his words. I hesitated before answering, knowing hesitation was a crime in itself. Home, I said finally. Just got off work. He nodded once, then let his eyes wander to my car. You from around here? Yes, sir. My voice cracked on the sir, and I hated myself for it. Inside the store, the other man had stepped closer to the window. I could feel him watching, like a second shadow glued to my back. The pump clicked off, loud as a gunshot in the quiet. My heart jumped. I put the nozzle back in place, moving slow, careful not to look like I was rushing. Rushing would be wrong. Everything out here had a rule, and none of them were written down. Then came the boots on gravel. Steady, unhurried. I turned to see him walking toward me, one hand still resting near his holster. Mind showin' me your license? He asked, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was, out here. I reached for my wallet slow, every muscle in my body screaming not to make a mistake. My fingers felt stiff, like they didn't belong to me. Sure, I said, forcing my voice calm, though my throat was dry as dust. He didn't move closer, just watched, his eyes cold and patient. The light above the station flickered, throwing quick shadows across his face. I pulled the license out, held it so he could see before stepping closer. He took it without a thank you, studied it longer than necessary. Darius, he read aloud, rolling my name slow, like he was tasting it. From Claiborne. Yes, sir. You workin'? Yes, sir. At the warehouse off Route 12. His thumb brushed the edge of my ID. He didn't look up when he asked the next question. Got anything in that car I need to know about? My stomach nodded. No, sir. Just headin' home. Finally, he looked up. For a second, neither of us said a word. The air felt thick, like syrup. Behind him, his friend had stepped outside now, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, a smile curled on his face like he'd seen this play out before. The sheriff handed my license back, slow as molasses. His fingers lingered just long enough to make my skin crawl. Then he shifted his weight, eyes sliding toward my back seat. "Mind if I take a look?" My breath caught. The question wasn't really a question, and we both knew it. Say no, and I look like I got something to hide. Say yes, and I'm standing in the dark on a gravel lot while two men watch me like vultures. Either way, I'm exposed. "I'd rather not," I said carefully, every word balanced like glass. He chewed on that, his jaw tight, his hand brushing his belt like it was an old habit he couldn't break. Then, slow, he smiled, a small, sharp thing that never touched his eyes. "Claiborne, huh? That's a long way to be alone this time of night." The silence that followed was heavier than anything he'd said before. The sound of cicadas buzzed like static in my ears. Finally, he stepped back, just one pace, and it felt like the ground opened up under me. "Drive safe, Darius." It didn't sound like a kindness. It sounded like a sentence. I nodded, slid back into the car, my hands trembling so bad I nearly dropped the keys. The seatbelt felt like a noose against my chest. I started the engine, the roar splitting the quiet, and for a second, I thought they'd stop me. Thought I'd see blue lights in the mirror before I hit the road. But nothing came. Just their figures, standing in that sickly glow, watching me drive away. The highway swallowed me whole. No cars, no lights, just the hum of tires and the thud of my heartbeat in my ears. Every set of headlights in the distance made me tense, waiting for the flash of red and blue, for another pair of boots on gravel. I got home that night, but the road didn't leave me. The sound of that pump clicking off still rings in my head. The way he said my name still crawls under my skin. And the worst part? I keep thinking about what would have happened if I'd said the wrong word. Or if he'd just decided he didn't like the look of me. A late-night drive home from a hospital shift should have been uneventful. But when a black woman sees flashing lights on a desolate stretch of road, a simple traffic stop turns into a quiet, suffocating nightmare. There are no raised voices, no broken laws, just silence, power, and a darkness that feels alive. Because sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that end without a sound. I left the hospital parking lot just after midnight. My shift had run over, and the fluorescent lights inside still burned in the back of my eyes as I pulled onto the empty highway. The air outside was thick with August humidity, making the inside of my car feel like a damp cocoon even with the windows cracked. I turned the radio down low, some late-night talk show murmuring about politics I wasn't in the mood for, and let the road swallow me. The highway was dark, almost unnaturally so. No streetlights, just a thin strip of asphalt cutting through endless fields and tree lines. The kind of road that makes you feel small. I drove steady, keeping to the speed limit, because late at night in these parts, you learn not to give anyone a reason to notice you. Especially wearing scrubs, looking as tired as I felt. About 20 minutes in, I saw the glow of headlights appear in my rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it, just another traveler out late. But then they stayed close. Too close. My stomach tightened. When the flash of red and blue lit up behind me, it felt like the bottom dropped out of the world. I eased over to the shoulder, tires crunching gravel, heart pounding so hard it made my hands tremble. I kept them on the wheel, in plain sight, like Mama taught me. Rule number 1, don't reach for anything unless they tell you. The car door slammed behind me, heavy against the quiet. I glanced at the mirror and saw him coming, tall, broad, his uniform shirt catching the glow of his headlights. Sheriff's badge gleaming on his chest. His shadow stretched long across the ground, swallowing the white lines of the road. He stopped just shy of my window. I rolled it down slowly, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Evenin', ma'am," he said. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "License and registration?" "Yes, sir," I whispered, already reaching, slow, deliberate, for my wallet on the passenger seat. "I'm a nurse. Just got off shift." His eyes flicked to my scrubs, then back to my face. No reaction. He didn't even nod. I handed over my license with both hands, my fingers brushing his for the briefest second. His skin was cool. His grip, firm. "You know why I pulled you over?" he asked. "No, sir." He tapped the roof of my car lightly, like knocking on a door. "Your tail lights out." I felt my stomach drop. I'd checked my car last week. Everything worked fine. But I just nodded. I didn't realize. The silence that followed stretched too long, filled only by the hum of his engine and the distant chirp of crickets. He leaned down, resting his forearm on the edge of my window, close enough that I could smell the faint tang of tobacco on his clothes. "Where you headed?" he asked, voice low, like we were sharing a secret. "Home," I said. My throat was so dry the word barely came out. "Where's home?" I gave him the name of my street, praying it sounded like the truth. Praying the truth was enough. He repeated it under his breath, slow, like testing the weight of it. Then his eyes shifted toward the back seat of my car. Empty except for a folded jacket and my work bag. But the way he looked made me feel naked. "Step out of the car for me," he said. And just like that, the night closed in. My fingers froze on the steering wheel. His words hung in the air, heavy as a death sentence. Step out of the car. Every instinct screamed no. Every rule Mama drilled into me said yes. Don't argue. Don't hesitate. Don't give him a reason. "Yes, sir," I said, my voice small, almost swallowed by the hum of his cruiser's engine. I opened the door slow, feeling the weight of his gaze on me like a hand pressing between my shoulder blades. Gravel crunched under my shoes as I stepped out into the thick night air. The world felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your own heartbeat sound like a drum in your ears. He motioned toward the front of my car. "Come on over here." I walked, legs stiff, my scrub pants clinging to my skin. The headlights from his cruiser cast long, sharp shadows across the empty road. There wasn't another car in sight, just black trees and darkness stretching forever in both directions. "Put your hands on the hood," he said. Calm. Polite. Like he was asking me to pass the salt. I froze. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. "Sir, I..." Now. That single word cut through the night like a blade. I did as I was told. The hood was still warm from the drive, radiating heat against my palms. My reflection wavered faintly in the chrome trim, warped and ghostly under the glare of his lights. Behind me, I heard the click of his boots on gravel, slow and deliberate. Then the sound stopped. I could feel him standing there, his presence filling the space like smoke. "You nervous?" he asked, his voice close now, almost at my ear. "Yes, sir," I whispered. He chuckled softly, a sound that made my stomach knot. "No need to be nervous if you're not hiding anything." The smell of tobacco was stronger now, mixed with something metallic, gun oil, maybe. My arms ached from holding them out so long. My heart hammered so hard it made the hood tremble under my hands. "Where you work again?" he asked. "The hospital," I said quickly. "Night shift nurse. Long hours for a woman out here alone." His words slid under my skin like splinters. I stared straight ahead, at the empty road stretching into darkness. No cars. No lights. Just me, him, and the night swallowing everything. He stayed silent for a beat too long. Then, all right. Turn around. I turned, slow, my breath catching. His face was shadowed by the brim of his hat, but I could see the curve of a smile, thin, sharp, wrong. He studied me like a man deciding on something. Finally, he stepped back, just enough to break the tension strangling the air. "You can go," he said. It didn't sound like permission. It sounded like dismissal. Like he was bored now. I nodded, too fast, and walked back to my car. Every step felt like walking across a frozen lake, praying it wouldn't crack. My hands shook so bad I fumbled the door handle twice before sliding inside. When I started the engine, the sound shattered the quiet like glass. I pulled away slow, afraid to look in the mirror, but I couldn't help it. He was still there. Standing in the glow of his headlights, watching me drive into the dark. The road ahead felt endless. My chest burned from holding my breath so long, but even when I finally exhaled, it didn't help. That weight stayed. The fear stayed. Because the whole time I was driving, one thought clung to me like a shadow I couldn't shake. What if he changes his mind? A routine drive home on a rainy night turned into something far more terrifying than flashing lights. One request from a sheriff changed everything, leaving me standing alone on a deserted road with nothing but headlights and fear. No shouting, no violence, just silence, authority, and the weight of what could happen if I said the wrong word. Sometimes, horror isn't loud. Sometimes, it's the sound of rain and boots on wet gravel. I left the bar just after 10, later than I'd planned. I don't drink much, but an old friend from work insisted we catch up, and time has a way of slipping when you're laughing about things that make you forget how heavy life feels sometimes. The streets were mostly empty, slick with the shine of recent rain. My car smelled faintly of coffee from the thermos I'd brought earlier, a little comfort for a long night. The road home was the kind you don't think about, quiet, lined with pine trees, long stretches where you can drive 5 minutes without seeing another car. I liked that road, usually. Not tonight. Something about the dark pressing in from both sides made me feel smaller than usual. I had music playing low, just enough to keep me company, when the flashing lights filled my rear-view mirror. Red and blue, sudden and violent against the soft dark. My chest tightened. I checked my speed, 5 under the limit. Seatbelt on. Taillights fine as far as I knew. Still, I pulled over, heart knocking against my ribs so hard it hurt. Tires crunched on wet gravel as I eased onto the shoulder. The cruiser stopped behind me, engine idling like a slow growl. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened. A figure stepped out, tall, broad, uniform catching the strobe of his own lights. Sheriff's badge glinting. His shadow stretched long across the wet pavement as he walked toward me. I rolled the window down before he even asked. Kept both hands on the wheel, just like Mama told me growing up. Rule number 1, don't reach. Don't move fast. Don't give them a reason. "Evenin'," he said, his voice deep, slow, measured. "Evening, sir," I replied, trying to sound steady, though my throat felt like sandpaper. "You know why I stopped you?" "No, sir," I said, because what else could I say? He leaned down, his face shadowed under the brim of his hat, eyes catching mine just long enough to make my stomach flip. "You got a light out," he said finally. I swallowed. I didn't realize. He nodded, but it wasn't the kind of nod that said we were done. His eyes drifted toward the back seat of my car, then to the glove compartment. "License and registration," he said, casual, like asking for the time. "Yes, sir." My fingers twitched against the wheel. I spoke each move like a prayer. "My wallet's in my back pocket." "Reaching now." He didn't answer. Just watched. I moved slow, pulled the license out, handed it to him with both hands. He took it without a word, his fingers brushing mine, cold against the damp night air. "You live out this way?" he asked, still looking at the card. "Yes, sir. About 15 minutes down." He grunted something low, handed the license back, and then, nothing. Just silence. He didn't move. Didn't tell me I could go. The rain started again, soft at first, then harder, drumming on the hood like a warning. Finally, he stepped back, but not away. His boots crunched slow on the wet gravel, circling my car like he was memorizing it. Then he came back to the window, leaned in closer this time. I could smell tobacco on his breath, feel the weight of his presence pressing against me like a wall. "You got anything in here I need to know about?" His tone wasn't harsh. It was worse. Calm. Friendly, almost. Like a hunter asking a rabbit if it plans to run. My throat tightened until it hurt. "No, sir." His hand rested on the edge of my door, fingers tapping slow, steady. The rain picked up, slashing against the windshield in sheets now, the wipers fighting to keep up. Everything outside looked warped and unreal through the glass, like the world itself was holding its breath. "Step out of the car for me," he said. And just like that, the bottom dropped out of the night. The words hit me like ice water. Step out of the car. My first instinct was to ask why. My second was to remember every headline I'd ever read and every warning my father drilled into me as a kid. Don't argue. Don't give attitude. Don't give them a reason. "Yes, sir," I said, and my voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. I opened the door slow, feeling the rain hit my shoulders in cold, hard bursts. The ground was slick under my shoes as I stepped onto the gravel shoulder, headlights casting long, broken shadows across the wet road. His cruiser's light spun red and blue on the trees, painting the darkness like a warning sign. "Walk to the front," he said, nodding toward the hood of my car. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the night itself was pressing down on me. The rain plastered my shirt to my skin. I could feel it dripping down my spine, mixing with sweat I couldn't control. I stopped where he told me, my hands hanging useless at my sides. "Hands on the hood," he said. I hesitated just a fraction too long. Long enough for my pulse to roar in my ears. Then I did what he asked, pressing my palms flat against the slick metal. It was warm from the engine, but the rain cooled it fast. My reflection shimmered faintly in the surface, warped and broken by raindrops. Behind me, his boots crunched closer. Then stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but the rain pounding and my heart thudding so loud I swore he could hear it. "You nervous?" he asked, his voice low, almost conversational. "Yes, sir," I said. My voice cracked. He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that crawled up my spine. "Ain't no need to be nervous if you're not hiding anything." The smell of wet earth mixed with the sharp tang of tobacco as he stepped closer. I could feel him there, behind me, the space between us shrinking until the night itself felt suffocating. My arms ached from holding them out so long, my fingers gripping the hood like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "Where you work?" he asked. "Steel plant," I said. "Just finished a late shift." He made a low sound, maybe a grunt, maybe a laugh. Hard to tell over the rain. Then, long drive home for a night like this. The pause that followed was worse than anything he'd said. Long enough for fear to curl in my gut like a living thing. Finally, his boots shifted. Stepped back. My breath caught, but I didn't move. Not until he spoke again. "All right. You can go." Just like that. No explanation. No warning. His tone was flat, almost bored, like the whole thing had been nothing. I turned, slow, careful, my eyes flicking to his face for something, anger, amusement, anything, but there was nothing. Just a shadow under the brim of his hat, unreadable. "Thank you, sir," I whispered, because that's what you're supposed to say when someone lets you keep your life. I walked back to my car on legs that barely felt connected to me. The door handle was slick, my fingers clumsy as I yanked it open and slid inside. The seatbelt clicked like a gun cocking. I started the engine, the sound shattering the quiet like glass breaking. My headlights cut through the rain, but everything beyond them looked unreal, warped and distant. As I pulled away, I risked one glance in the mirror. He was still there. Standing in the downpour, hands on his hips, watching me drive into the dark. The road stretched on forever. No cars, no houses, just water sliding across blacktop and trees bending in the wind. I drove with both hands locked on the wheel, checking the rear view every few seconds, waiting for those red and blue lights to bloom again. They never did. But the feeling didn't leave. It clung to me all the way home, sat with me in the silence of my living room, followed me into bed. Because it wasn't just fear of what happened. It was fear of how close I'd come to disappearing into that rain-soaked night, and nobody ever knowing why. Thanks so much for watching. Your support truly means the world to me. Every like, every comment helps this channel grow and keeps me going. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new upload. My dream right now is to reach 100 subscribers, and with your help, I know it's possible. See you in the next one.